Hundreds of thousands of people are participating in a unity rally in Paris, France today in response to the violence that country bore witness to this past week. Among those on site are numerous foreign heads of state. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder is in Paris, where he met earlier today with French and European officials for high-level talks on counterterrorism. He appeared on NBC's Meet the Press this morning.
Would you say the United States is at war with radical Islam?
Well, I would say that we are at war with terrorists who commit these heinous acts and who use Islam. They use a corrupted version of Islam to justify their actions. We are bound and determined to hold them accountable, to find them wherever they are.
Joining me now is Jeremy Scahill, investigative reporter for The Intercept and author of Dirty Wars. The world is a battlefield. On the one hand, we have an act of terrorism and this incredible response in support of a civil liberty. But we know that in recent history, the actual behavior of states after terrorism is to reduce our civil liberties. Give me a sense of how you expect actually U.S. and European nations to respond in the wake of this, kind of after the jubilation is over.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, France and the French state has a long history of Islamophobia and of cracking down on civil liberties. They have an extensive surveillance network that gives the NSA a run for its money in terms of on a domestic level inside of France. Also, you know, as we're watching this huge outpouring of support in Paris, let's remember that many of those world leaders that are there are total enemies of press freedom. You know, from people that are locking up journalists. You know, the Irish leader, blasphemy is a crime. You know, you have Benjamin Netanyahu there, who also is a great enemy of a free press. David Cameron, who insisted that The Guardian had to smash its files from Edward Snowden. So, I mean, the hypocrisy is on display. At the same time, there's a real debate about would there be this kind of outpouring of support if it was a different religion whose revered leader was under attack. I think these are very serious questions. But my concern is that this is going to, as you were implying, result in an even further reduction or restriction in civil liberties in France and elsewhere.
I particularly want to think about the U.S. context since Attorney General Eric Holder is there. And apparently the White House is planning a summit for next month. And it's based on this 2011 strategy called Empowering Local Partners to Prevent Violent Extremism in the U.S. I haven't read the full report yet, but when I hear that title, I think, oh my goodness, is this now an excuse, a reason to remilitarize these local police forces when we've just had a conversation in the wake of Ferguson about removing that militarization?
Right. I mean, let's remember, these kinds of incidents are actually few and far between. And if you look at what's happened in the United States, the FBI has a PhD in breaking up its own terror plots, where they'll go into mosques, they'll take advantage of mentally challenged individuals or people with very serious, issues that actually need probably psychiatric help. And instead, the FBI will sort of encourage them along and then say, hey, we've broken up, like in Newburgh, we've broken up this huge plot, when in reality it seemed like the FBI kind of cooked up the plot to begin with to say, hey, we're cracking down on this. Also, you know, in Minneapolis, there's been very racist targeting of the Somali community. Yes, there are Somali Americans who have gone to Somalia and acted as suicide bombers. This is a very serious problem that these groups are calling on young Westerners to do this. But the response has been quite frankly, racist and Islamophobic. We need to develop a better way to address what is actually a relatively minor threat in our society, given all the other threats that we're facing.
In fact, part of what we're seeing now, there's this video that appears to show the Paris gunman pledging his support to ISIS. Now, NBC hasn't verified where or when or any of that. But just from what you know about these networks, is it likely that there's an actual ISIS connection as opposed to maybe a kind of imagined one here?
No, I mean, look, first of all, this guy, like, you know, if this is legit, he has something taped up on a wall. He's doing push-ups. I mean, he barely can speak Arabic, and he's saying, you know, oh, I pledge my allegiance to the caliphate. Look, I think that it's quite possible that the two brothers that were involved with the shooting at the magazine had connections to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. I've been talking to sources within AQAP. They tell me that at least one of the brothers was there, that there was training involved. You know, AQAP has been very public in saying, let's go kill these kinds of cartoonists, let's assassinate them. I would be very careful, though, at saying, you know, this is an ISIS event, this is an AQAP event. What I think is more likely is that there's a hybrid of having, you know, been around these characters, been around these groups, but then making your own plot and doing it.
Thank you to Jeremy Scahill. Coming up next, we're going to go live to Paris for the latest on this morning's massive unity rally and my interview with Golden Globe nominee Ava DuVernay, who is the director of the critically acclaimed movie Selma. Her thoughts on LBJ, Martin Luther King Jr., and women of the movement. You are not going to want to miss it. There's more MHP Show at the top of the hour.